During my deep research for this video on Linux system security, which I've been preparing for weeks, I stumbled upon a web page that was, without exaggeration, a real eye-opener. I got there by digging into a critical vulnerability recently discovered in SUDO. And brace yourselves, it potentially affects every system using versions from 1.914 to 1.917. It exploits a structural weakness in SUID. And yes, there's already a script online that you can download and test yourself. Just one hit, and voila, root privileges, clean, instant, brutal. But if you're using Debian stable, you can sleep soundly. Why? Because we're way behind in versions, and not by accident. And guess what? That's actually a good thing. Let's talk about the myth of security. I know this is a taboo topic for many of you. You love to believe that GNU Linux is super secure, invulnerable, that you can do anything with your system because Linux gives you full control. But it's precisely in this chain of wrong assumptions, presumption, prejudice, underestimation, and overconfidence that the real vulnerability lies. Of a system, yes, but also of a person. And that goes for you, and your beloved GNU Linux, with maybe a few proprietary codecs thrown in here and there for good measure. First, there's presumption. Linux is secure by default. No, it's not. Linux is more securable than other systems, but if you misconfigure it, it's just as vulnerable as anything else. Then there's prejudice. Only Windows has viruses and exploits. Bullshit. Linux has its own vulnerabilities, and they're often more dangerous because no one expects them. Then comes underestimation. I don't need to update right away. And while you delay updates, someone's already using that exploit to break into your system. And finally, overconfidence. I know what I'm doing. I control everything. Spoiler, no you don't. You don't know what every single process is doing. You don't understand every interaction between components. Nobody does. This flaw, listed as CVE-2025-32463, has a CVSS score of 9.3 out of 10. That's practically critical. It was discovered by Rich Murch from the Stratascale Cyber Research Unit and affects SUDO versions from 1.914 to 1.917. SUDO is the command you use every day to perform administrative tasks. When you type sudo apt update, you're telling the system, run this command as root, just this once. It's the security mechanism that should protect you from running everything as an admin. It's your digital bodyguard. Well, that bodyguard had a crack in its armor, and what a crack it was. The flaw exploits sudo's crt option. For those who don't know, crt means change root, to change the root directory. It tells the system, for this process, pretend this folder is the root of the file system. It's an isolation technique used to create sandboxes, limit file access, test software securely. Serious stuff. In June 2023, with SUDO 1.914, developers changed how SUDO resolves paths when using crt. It seemed harmless. Resolving paths using the crt directory specified by the user while still evaluating the suitor's file. In simple terms, SUDO starts looking inside the crt directory before it finishes checking whether the user is actually allowed to do what they're asking. Here's how the attack works in simple steps. First, the attacker creates a fake directory that looks legitimate. Second, inside this directory, they place a fake configuration file telling the system to load a specific library. Third, that library is, of course, written by the attacker. Fourth, when sudo is executed with the crt option, it ends up loading the malicious library. Fifth, the library executes with root privileges and opens a shell for the attacker. It's brilliantly simple and terrifyingly effective. Unlike many other sudo vulnerabilities, this one does not require the user to already have sudo access. Any local user can exploit it. Think about that. Normally, to exploit sudo, you need at least some privileges. It's like saying you need to work at the bank to steal from it. But this flaw is different. It's like anyone can walk in and open the vault. No special setup needed. Systems running sudo 1.9.14 to 1.917 are vulnerable by default. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't misconfigure anything. It's just vulnerable. There are already multiple proof-of-concept scripts on GitHub. This isn't theory, it's practice. Anyone can download and test them, and if they can test it, they can attack with it. SUDO is installed on virtually every modern Linux system. Ubuntu, Fedora, CentOS, RHEL, all potentially affected. It's like discovering that every lock of a certain brand opens with the same master key. Let's talk about SUID, the mechanism that makes this attack possible. Set user ID is a special permission that says, when this file is executed, run it with the privileges of the file's owner, not the user who launched it. Think of the passwd command. When you change your password, it needs to modify files that only root can touch. But you're not root. So how does it work? SUID. The passwd binary has the SUID bit set, so when you run it, it runs as root. SUID is needed because users must perform actions that require admin rights, changing passwords, pinging, mounting devices. All of these need elevated privileges. But it's dangerous because any bug in a SUID program is a potential privilege escalation. An attacker who hijacks a SUID binary runs code as root. SUDO itself is a SUID root binary. That means every time you run sudo, you're executing code with root privileges. The safety relies entirely on sudo's internal implementation. But if there's a bug in that implementation, game over. Debian stable uses sudo 1.9.13, earlier than the vulnerable 1.9.14. That's not a coincidence. Debian stable follows the idea that boring is beautiful. Once a version is frozen, only security patches are backported. Every package is tested for months before being released. Only critical patches get through. New features? They wait. Here's the paradox. Being behind can actually make you safer. Ubuntu 22.04 LTS had sudo 1.99, safe. Fedora 38 had 1.9.14, vulnerable. Cutting-edge distros are often the first to get hit by bugs and new features. Chasing the latest often means catching the latest vulnerabilities. Edit? Let's get to the point. Because trust me, the road to hell is paved with change, mod 777. But first, a quick refresher on Linux permissions. Because to really understand how dangerous this sudo vulnerability is, you need to understand what happens when permissions go wrong. When you run ls-l, you see something like -rwxr-xr-. It's not ancient hieroglyphs. It has precise meaning. The first character shows the file type. The next 9 are grouped in threes: owner, group, others. Each group gets read, write, execute permissions. A dash means the permission is missing. In numeric form, read equals 4, write equals 2, execute equals 1. You add them up. So change mod 755 means owner equals 7, group equals 5, others equals 5. The biggest sin in sysadmin history. When you run change mod 777, you're saying anyone can read, write, and execute this file. If it's a script, an attacker can replace it. If it's a config file, they can alter it. If it's a program, they can inject malware. It's like leaving your front door open with a sign that says, "Come on in." Even worse, setting SUID on scripts. Interpreted languages like Bash, Python, Perl weren't designed to safely handle SUID. Any bug in the interpreter equals root. Most systems ignore SUID on scripts for this reason. But some don't. And when they don't, guaranteed disaster. Change mod -r777/var/www/. And now every kid on the internet can upload malware, replace your pages, steal your data. Use the least privilege principle. Data file, 644. Executable script, 755. Private key, 600. Use dedicated groups for complex apps. Don't give www-data access to everything. Isolate it. And when needed, use ACLS for fine-grained control. First, check your sudo version. If it's between 1.9.14 and 1.9.9.17, update now. The fixed version is sudo 1.9.27p1 or later. If you can't update right away, disable sudo's croot feature. Monitor your logs. Watch for sudo with croot attempts, especially from users who shouldn't be using it. Don't trust new features blindly. Wait before using new software in production. The worst bugs always surface early. Test in isolated environments. Never deploy untested code in production. Subscribe to CVE alerts for the software you use. There are free services for this. Use them. The real problem isn't sudo or Linux or bugs. The real problem is your mindset. Linux is secure. No, Linux is more securable. But if you misconfigure it, it's just as broken. I control everything. No, you don't. No one does. Systems are too complex. No one sees everything. It won't happen to me. That's what SolarWinds, LastPass, and VMware admins thought. Real security starts with humility. Admit you don't know everything. Assume there are bugs. Prepare for failure. Verify constantly. Trust nothing fully. Every system is vulnerable. Every piece of software has bugs. Every config can be improved. Security isn't a goal. It's a continuous process. And then there's the human factor, the most unpredictable. You can have the most secure system in the world, but if your user uses password 123, clicks shady links, or installs random junk, it's game over. Security is a chain, and the chain always breaks at the weakest link. And that link is almost always the user. This vulnerability teaches us several core truths. SUDO is now so complex it includes features like CRUT, which most users don't even use. Complexity breeds bugs. Every new feature is a new attack surface. Debian Stable, with its old SUDO version, was safer than bleeding-edge distros. Think about that. The latest version isn't always the greatest version. SUID, SUDO, root, every elevated privilege is a door. Every security mechanism can become an attack vector. How many of you even knew about SUDO's CRUT option or the NSS mechanism? That's why we study. That's why we stay updated. You can't protect what you don't understand. Don't trust, verify, test, monitor. Always assume something's broken. Prepare for when it breaks, because it will. It's just a matter of time. And remember, if you think your system is invulnerable, it probably already was compromised. You just don't know it yet. Now go check your SUDO version. And while you're at it, take a good look at those file permissions too. Hell is waiting, but at least now you'll recognize it when you see it.